Welcome back to Rise to Liberty podcast. Today I am joined by Phil Lammy, but before we get into that real quick, I did just want to run through our sponsor real quick, which is Nadu Shave Company. I don't know how many times I have to tell you guys this, but this is without a doubt the best razor you can get. There's a reason our fathers and grandfathers used the single blade safety razors for so long. They were the standard before all this multi-blade plastic China-made crap. Stop buying it. Go ahead and go to nadeaushaveco.com. Use promo code RISE15, RISE15 for 15% off at checkout. You will not be disappointed with this. It is absolutely the best razor, and I highly recommend it. Nadu Shave Company, where tradition beats modernity. So on that note, this is make sure and go ahead and scan that QR code for everyone watching. That's it's gonna turn up all of the Rise to Liberty stuff. We've got a bunch of cool stuff coming out. So go ahead and scan that, or go to risetoliberty.com/links, which is where you can find pretty much everything. And Shaylee wanted to say hi, and she misses you. So on that note, let's get into the dreaded episode of Libertarian Politics. So, I guess, what was your overall opinion of the convention?
Sure. For those that don't know who I am, I'm the former secretary of the state of Utah Libertarian Party and former chair of one time of the Salt Lake County Party and the Utah County Party. Just recently stepped down for some things I'm doing in my personal life that are really exciting. I will be really clear that because of my new things I'm doing, I was not able to dedicate my time to go to the convention. But I did attend the one in Reno, and I did attend the one in person in Orlando, which was interesting because during the lockdown, several states were prevented from coming and having to come back and having a bunch of ridiculous requirements that made it really prohibitive. So, but it was interesting because at the state convention, I was nominated to be an alternate, even though I said I'm not going to go. But I landed number one spot for that. And curious, for the Reno one, I landed number one after Barry, the chair. So number one again, I guess. But opinion, I think we all knew that there would be some warring because the factions. To be honest with you, here in Utah, we really don't engage in that. I've really been proud and pride myself in the fact that we don't have the drama in our state that other states do. And perhaps it has to do with the fact that we have a lot of liberty here already in Utah. I mean, we have our issues and we can talk about those. But, we just had constitutional carry just passed. We do have an income tax, and that's not cool, but it is lower than many states. Property taxes are lower than many other states, although that's quite dependent on the residential exemption. Otherwise, it would be just not as good. But there are a lot of good things here. School choice, the movement, less government. Overall, Utah is a decent place. There are issues, and we can talk about that later on. But I find it really curious. We can go into it.
So here's my overall opinion. In general, the convention was great. I think it was one of the best conventions, at least that I've ever seen, especially ever since I've been involved with the party. Reno was fun, but it did look like DC was a lot more fun. So I am kind of bummed that I was unfortunately, not able to make it. Although the big elephant in the room as far as Chase goes, here's the thing is I don't really give a shit about Chase. I will say up front, I think he's nice. I don't have anything against him personally. I don't have anything bad to say about him, other than some positions that he holds that I absolutely view as abhorrent. Um, However, just from a tactical standpoint, I do not view a Chase nomination as very smart for the party, even for these left-leaning libertarians. I do not view it as a smart move for anybody in the party. Right now, it's just not the time to run a Chase candidate. Um, it has been a PR nightmare, and nobody's going to take the party seriously. So,
Interesting,
they're
because
left or right.
you brought about a nightmare. No, I was listening to the in Spaces and X, and also following up on the different meetings, the rallies. You know, Trump,
Yeah,
RFK Jr., caught a little bit of the Vivek debate with Dave Smith, and I think it was Clint, right, who won
yeah,
the straw poll. So I saw a little bit of that. Didn't see the whole thing, but I will say that it certainly did look super exciting. You mentioned this was probably the most exciting one
yeah.
out there. I did go to the Reno as well, and it was fun having Ron Paul come at the very end. The
Oh, yeah,
Mises only event. Of course, everyone was invited, but it was sponsored by Mises. But you know, hats off to Angela. I was first skeptical because I was
agreed.
thinking, what in the world is Trump doing? And then as things unfolded, because they reached out to her, and then they said, well, if you're going to come, then what's, you know, and she had been in communication with RFK Jr. for the longest time. And kudos to her for not letting them hijack the convention to nominate their candidates, because I'm sure they would have been
Yeah,
happy with that. There's issues of that, of course, with especially in Utah. You can't have two parties endorsing the same candidate, and I'm sure in other states that's a problem too. But the amount of eyes and the
yeah,
media attention. I used to live in Washington D.C., and so if you know anything about Washington D.C., is they're plugged into politics 24/7. It's their morning, afternoon, midnight coffee. They're just drinking it nonstop. Uh, it does shut down, by the way. If you happen to go to DC and it's evening time, there are a few places that are still open. There's the Georgetown community, and then there's some pubs just kind of the south side of the Capitol. Some fun things, but it does kind of get quiet, unless of course you cross the Anacostia River, and then there's the crime, and you know that's a whole other
yeah,
matter. But putting that aside, it's crazy. So if you haven't been exposed to the 24/7 media attention all the time in DC, it was probably a wide awakening for those that never experienced before. But wow, all the eyes and all the attention,
yeah,
and everyone's talking about it.
yeah, yeah. No, it was interesting because I had never seen that much coverage of anything libertarian outside of the libertarian circles, and seeing screenshots from all over the country of saying, "Hey, look, libertarian up on, the I forgot what they're called, but the little news banners on the bottom just talking about the libertarian convention." And there were, pictures of people in restaurants in, I think I saw Austin, Texas, and there was a few other places saying, "Hey, look, they're talking about the libertarians on TV," and it's usually not a good thing when that happens, but this time it actually was. Um,
It's kind of hard to ignore the
yeah,
fact that Trump, RFK Jr., and all these things are happening. Well, of course, the media wants to get the gotchas, right?
yeah,
And of course, Trump has now been indicted on over 34 charges, and
yeah,
that's a whole another matter because having the Justice Department of the sitting president being a major rival politically with another candidate. The
yeah,
optics are not very good because it probably isn't very good at all. And we all know how the Justice Department is politically charged against anyone. It's not just against Trump, it's anyone who speaks out. The COVID regime is one of those things. We talked about RFK Jr. is really good about talking about it because he got really affected about like other people did. And I don't need to give his talking points. I wanted to mention something. You said Chase Oliver is a nice person. I've met him. I made it my duty or obligation to meet the candidates as they came into Utah, whether I was going to be able to go to Washington, D.C. Mike Tremont came a couple times. He came last year to the convention. I appreciated that. He actually didn't say nice things about Gary Johnson, probably particularly Bill Weld. I mean, he's a
which is pretty funny because he's like Gary Johnson 2.0, but
yeah, perhaps, right? And it's interesting because I have the new Gold Deal book from Mike Tremont, and there's some funny things in there we can talk about later. But then Chase Oliver came into town last fall. Got a chance to meet him. He is very nice. He clearly is not of my faith and religion, but he says he's a Christian and he wouldn't impose that upon anyone else. And and when it comes to like personal interaction stuff, I mean, he was pleasant and fine. We do differ, of course, on the culture wars, right? And it's best to not engage in those, and he likes to engage in that. And that's probably why we're having some turmoil, because it's a no-win scenario, right? If we're engaged in the culture wars, then we're going to expose ourselves to either side or any side. I think RFK Jr. does a good job to say, I'm just not going to get into the culture wars. And number one, that's politically smart. And number two, he's talking about healing in his campaign, right?
Yeah.
Healing on many fronts, whether it be our food, our water, our trust issues. Of course, he wants to reform government. And of course, you and I would say, well, I mean, the problem is
exactly
the over government, right? But I do believe he's coming from a standpoint where it's like, we really need to restore that trust amongst the people. I don't think he's naive. I think he just has a belief in that. But then we talk about like, competing currencies and our private wallets and using free markets to do things. And then ears start perking up because that's what RFK Jr. is promoting. And I mean, he wants to keep the Fed. I think it's a bad idea, but he's talking about competing currencies. And just imagine, Jacob, not having to pay a capital gains because you used one currency over another.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you should never let the good spoil the great, right?
That's
so
right.
Obviously we'd want to end the Fed, but I mean, even a president that would acknowledge something else, roll back some of the tax code, I'll take that over nothing, but
yeah, you sound like a pragmatist. What's wrong with you?
I know, how dare I? But the issue with the culture war stuff is, for one, it's hard not to delve into the culture war stuff when that is what is getting people out to vote. So
Sure.
The largest voting base is women, and unfortunately women are involved in this culture war battle more than almost anyone else at this point. I would say arguably it probably affects them more directly than anyone. I feel like that's a fair statement to make. And so it's hard to not get into that without pissing somebody off. And unfortunately, you're going to have to if you get into it. Now, the thing that I've always said about Chase is I don't care that he's gay. That's none of my concern. It's not my life. I don't care. What I do care about is that it's being paraded around like an achievement.
I mean, it is June and it's
he was paraded around before June. So it's been his whole campaign leading up to getting the nomination and everything else. Either you were born with it, and if it is, then it's a mutable characteristic, which then it's nothing to be proud of because it just is. It's not good or bad. It just is. Or it's a choice, and in which case, I guess you can have pride in it, but you have to have earned something to have pride in something. It's an achievement if it's a choice. And so it's one or the other, but nonetheless, it's being paraded around like it's something, and I think it's nothing. And what's funny is everyone who is supporting Chase seems to be like, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. Well, then why is he wearing it on his sleeve? Why is it such a big thing? Why is he using it for the campaign if it's no big deal? If it's no big deal, then focus on these other issues. But it seems like a big deal. And so there's going to be backlash because of that. So the the position I see the Libertarians in now, Democrats are going to see it as, well, you're basically Democrats that lose, which I've seen people say that already. And then the right, they're going to just see us as Democrats who lose. So, we are in this predicament where it almost doesn't matter what we believe anymore, because we had all this attention on us, and because the ideas of the left libertarian are so unpopular right now that by going that direction, we are going to see, in my opinion, less than 1% this cycle. So that's just the way it is. And we're not going to get more than that. So even by the left libertarian standards, it kind of screws them over, even though they don't realize it yet.
You could argue that the fact that RFK Jr. in the race is already going to absorb votes.
Oh, yeah.
And that, I would say he's probably the biggest candidate since Ross Perot. And so he is going to take, honestly, from all parties. But there's also a group of people that we keep forgetting, which is those that didn't turn out to vote. Like, for example, my wife, my mother-in-law did not vote at all.
True.
They've always voted. They said, what choice do I have? And I said, well, I mean, there's Joe Jorgensen, but of course their campaign that had some mismessaging, and that between them and Spike. Oh yeah, and I had a thought about this because about that campaigning, a lot of the same people that are in Joe Jorgensen's campaign for all that are working for Chase.
Yeah,
and we know how that went. And I'm not casting any aspersions on Joe herself. I met her; she's a very nice lady. She is libertarian in her own right. Of course, she says that her husband looks more like an extremist than he is, and she's more of an extremist. That's a whole funny one. But the concept is, do we use Libertarian Party to move the Overton window and make a difference, like I believe what happened on the conference or the convention in Washington, D.C., or do we not? And so I'm probably less pessimistic than you in that we have Trump and RFK Jr. who showed up because they want to court votes.
Yeah.
And they're espousing ideas. I mean, did you have a chance to listen to RFK Jr.'s speech?
Yeah. I watched the whole convention, and I was really happy with everything until I was not only seeing the fallout after the nomination, but was also caught up in the middle of it because I got it from both angles,
Right.
which is probably not a thing to say during June, but that aside, I was on the receiving end of the attitude from the Republicans after Chase was nominated. And I was also on the receiving end of the left libertarians after Chase was nominated. And boy, that's, I think, why I'm more pessimistic. And it seems to me is that we kind of just squandered all that media attention.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm not as pessimistic as you. And of course, we both weren't there in the flesh, and you've experienced it. It can be crazy, a lot of dilatory motions, and just any delay tactics. And they successfully delayed. I mean, I thought Orlando was quite the delay because all Thursday was wasted on trying to decide whether they're going to accept online delegates, and it was not much of a contention because those states that couldn't attend because of government issues needed to get represented. So once again, just the mess. I just think Angela did such a great job.
She did great.
A re-election.
But then as soon as we have every pundit who's not on the left covering how much of a joke we are, I mean, we've got millions of people. I mean, every large content creator you can think of, between Tim Pool, Luke Rakowski,
sure,
Jeremy from the Quartering, you had Mark Dice making a video about it. Like, you've just got everyone slamming us from the right,
and they have large followings, right? That's the thing.
Massive followings. I mean, collectively, and so you've got that, And that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's not even necessarily that I'm pessimistic. I'm just reading the room.
Sure.
And
Of course, there's Jimmy Dore, and he wasn't exactly happy with it either, but he
yeah,
has a great rapport
exactly.
with Dave Smith. And so
I thought that was
Dave
the
is doing
best
his
coverage,
best.
honestly.
Right.
So
Yeah, Dave is doing his best, I think, to put it in a circumspection.
now, one thing I do want to pull up real quick, which if nobody has seen this so far, I'm sure everyone has, but I absolutely loved this. This was absolutely the highlight of the convention, in my opinion, and that was Trump talking about Ross. So we'll just go ahead and play that real quick.
If you vote for me on day one,
Oh.
I will commute the sentence of
I don't know if
Ross
you can hear
Ulbricht
that.
to a sentence
that's
of
why.
time.
Hold on.
I can hear it.
Let's see. I couldn't hear it on my end, so.
And if you vote for me on day one, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht to a sentence of time served. And if you vote for me on day
and
one,
just,
I will commute
just
the
that right
sentence.
there. Him even just saying the name, I saw that jump up Ross in Google Trends, because I'm a nerd. I keep track of things like that. And I saw, the search results for Ross and hashtag free Ross skyrocket all weekend long. And I think that's one of the major winning points. Obviously, everyone's like, oh, Trump's a liar, all of these things. And it's, yeah, of course he is, but he might actually do it. I don't know.
Yeah, he knows that libertarians don't owe him anything.
Yeah.
Right? So he can say anything he wants. And for those that weren't there, and I was not there, but my understanding is there were just so many people with free Ross signs in that room and up in front. I know Jeremy Kaufman was probably one of them,
yeah.
But he had a different sign. But so many people there, he didn't have to say the words, and I will pardon or commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht. He didn't have to say that. Yeah. And he did. And I know that RFK Jr. is kind of hemmed and hawed about that too.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it was about Snowden, right?
Yeah.
But so Ulbricht and then Assange, and that I think the Assange one is the one that he's kind of hemmed and hawed about, but not Ross Ulbricht. The fact that he created a website that where people were selling voluntarily goods and services of whatever type, throw that guy in jail for even offering that platform.
Well, and as far as I understand, it's the same district that Ross got convicted in is the same district that Trump just got convicted in.
Right.
So,
that's correct. And it was brought to his attention. So he has no love lost.
Yeah.
For that area, Manhattan.
Yeah, exactly. Which, I think it's really interesting because you're right. He didn't have to say that. That doesn't mean I believe that he's going to, but we have him on video now. And either he gets in and he does, or he doesn't. But either way, we have him on video saying it. So if he doesn't, I mean, it's almost like I don't quite know the word for it, but we can use it against him. And I mean that in the most respectful way possible. It's like, well, you said you were going to. And
he said the same thing about the interest rates, right? The Fed is manipulating our inflation, causing inflation, all these things. And what did he do? Keep the rates low, right? So he went back on his promises in 2016.
Yeah,
or 2016.
Exactly. I mean, there were so many things in 2016 that he promised. He basically ran with libertarian talking points in his campaign in 2016, and then turn around and hired people like John Bolton, so it's
somehow memorized ridiculous. Mike Lee, because Mike Lee got up also in the convention and told everyone they should support Donald Trump and get a libertarian policies passed through him. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I mean, I'm not opposed to Mike Lee. In fact, I've met him a few times, and he's one of the most libertarian senators in the Senate. And
Yeah.
so, I have voted for him and haven't stopped voting for him because of that. And he's still an incumbent. So yeah, the thing with Trump is, he has a good chance of winning, and where we live here in Utah, I would be shocked if Trump didn't win. However, I would also not be shocked if RFK Jr. did well because of the, Evan McMullen, or if you want to say McMuffin, votes. Yeah. And for those that don't realize it, I mean, he had Hillary Dark money behind him, and he was a staffer in the Senate for the Republican side. And really, he's buddies with that side of the Republican Party. The gravy train should never end. The wars are never bad, and let's have a more elite, upstanding government that functions on all wheels. But unfortunately, that when they do that, they harm people. And
well, and the way that the Utah Republican convention went this year, I'm not sure how well that would go over. Old school Republican, I'm not sure how well that part of the party is doing anymore. I mean, just not that long ago, we saw Mitt Romney booed at the convention. I think that was like 3 years ago. And there's only more contempt that has grown in the Utah GOP since then.
And Spencer Cox was just booed a few months ago, and he lost 2-1.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And then he was a poor sport about it. He accused them all being right-wing extremists.
Yeah,
the people that are most passionate about it, he's going to cast aspersions upon them. So, that's his choice. I like to frame this in the perspective as the people are making choices, and then often their choices I'm not going to make. And because I want to think the best of people. That's probably one of my either frailties or gifts. I don't know which one.
It depends who you're up against. But.
Right. I want to think the best of people and with intentions, and not say ill of someone. But I want to, at nearly all times, just talk about what they've said and what they're doing. And, I can voice opinion about that in ways that just sheds light on it without having to cast aspersions or passing judgment on someone.
Yeah. So, and I agree with you. I think Kennedy probably is going to get a decent amount of votes here in Utah. Although it's interesting because I view our state more as purple.
Sure, increasingly so.
Yeah. And maybe not officially within the polling data, or maybe officially, I'm not exactly sure. However, we did go for Trump in 2016. But who knows exactly how that's going to play out this cycle.
Well, I want to talk about that for a second. So one thing that Utah has that other states don't have is winning by plurality. And personally, I hate it. In as much as I'm not a fan of a tyranny of democracy, which is the majority over the minority, you could say that in a democracy system, if at least the majority of the people agree, then you have a consensus.
Yeah.
The problem with Utah is it doesn't require a majority. It requires a plurality. And so that's happened on multiple occasions, especially in the Republican primaries. So that happened when Cox 4 years ago, when he won by a plurality. Yeah. It happened. So, we had multiple people run there. The plurality won. Donald Trump won by a plurality. He didn't even get over 50%, I believe, in 2020. Yet he garnered all the votes. I mean, I like what Maine does, or Nebraska does, or a few other states where they appropriate the votes to the Electoral College based on the percentage of votes. I mean, how can you get less than 50% and get 100%, right?
Yeah.
And that's very common in all the states. But it's not a majority. It's a plurality. And so that's the challenge we have, because that plurality thing, you could say, hey, if you're a minority party and if you're a libertarian or you're an independent, that gives you a chance to win.
It does.
You have less than the majority, right? A plurality. But in reality, how is it playing out? right?
Yeah.
The reality is you've got these primaries, and then you got establishment money. And when I say establishment, I'm talking about those that have the money. The billionaires and millionaires are connected to the politics and the politicians and the current system. They're able to fund those campaigns and blast a bunch of ads against someone who may not have all the funds and may be the nominee of the party. I know the Democrats aren't really much of having that problem. That's a whole nother issue, because talking about whether they actually have a functioning party is another thing, because so many Democrats have registered as Republicans. So the real question is, who's really a rhino? Are the hardcore conservative small government types the rhinos, or the bigger government establishment elite types the rhinos? So I don't know how we're going to answer that question.
I mean, historically, the rhino would be the big, at least historically here in Utah, the rhinos would be the big Republican,
Right.
big tent, big government party. Whereas in the small government would be not the rhinos, I guess.
And to your point, if you strip the party labels away and just look at, maybe left-leaning, right-leaning, moderate votes, there are a whole lot of moderate votes in Utah. And so you could say definitely that Utah is more of a purple state. And it gets masked by, the Republican won. Well, the Republican voted for more wars. The Republican voted for bigger deficits. The Republican voted for raising taxes, not getting rid of the income tax, but keeping it in place, maybe tweaking it for businesses and shouldering the debt on the middle class and everyone else. I'm probably one of the few people that was not a fan of the Trump tax cuts in 2017, not because I didn't like the lowering of the business rates, but everyone else was sacrificed. So why should we pick winners and losers? If you have a lot of kids, you're going to benefit, right? If you are a corporation, you're going to benefit. But if you're middle of America, you're not. Oh, and even worse, those that were living overseas, okay, they had to pay taxes on unrealized gains, and that has gone to the court. I haven't heard whether that was overturned. I think that was hoping to be overturned. And actually, they might have. I have to look that up. But the problem is they were forcing them to realize something, a gain that doesn't exist. And so that was pitting one class of voter over the others. And so that would be an equity problem, right? And I believe they might have struck that down. I can't remember if they actually came out with that yet. That's another problem with the 2017 tax cuts. So do I have a problem with tax cuts? No, taxation is theft.
Yeah.
In fact, if I ever were to run for anything in office here in Utah, it would be one, get rid of the income tax.
Yeah.
There's nothing controversial about it. It's immoral. I would also run against the minimum wage. I mean, the least minimum wage is someone who's willing to accept the job. And it depends on what the industry is going to be, and the market's going to determine that. And you could say that there's protections for those who are unable to make those decisions, and that'd be contract law, and so we can make that happen. But indeed, here in Utah, we have a lot of good things happening, but we are definitely in a purple state.
Yeah. How do you think, at least the libertarian message, the overall message is going over here in Utah? Do you think people are receptive to it? Do you think people are kind of missing the days of smaller government Utah, or are they really pushing more towards this bigger system?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's easy to have confirmation bias. It's easy to be in an echo chamber when we're amongst our own a lot of the time, not all the time. I do hear a lot from those who are disaffected with the Republican Party, who are, I would say, your Ron Paul types, maybe more of your Trumper types. These are people that have a lot of hope with Trump, and that he would make a difference, or perhaps just the Ron Paul types. But I've gone to some events, one in particular, where they were just visibly frustrated. They're fighting in the Republican Party, and to make it happen. Of course, the delegates showed up, right? I mean, when 2/3 went for Phil Lyman over Spencer Cox, can't say they didn't show up.
Yeah.
But the fact that big money, the count my vote, which I call it count my establishment vote, count my elite vote.
Yeah.
Because they can circumvent the convention and get a bunch, in my opinion, signature harvesting and get on the ballot. And so they can circumvent the entire process. Or let's say, well, we are doing the process. No. It's a private party. It's a private association, and you're forcing the private association to accept people who choose not to play by the private association's rules. And you look at someone like Stuart PA. Stuart PA avoided the convention practically. He got a bunch of signatures. He's running for Congress. And who's backing him, of course? Mitt Romney. And who is he running against? He's running against Mike Kennedy. What did Mike Kennedy do? He ran for the U.S. Senate. He won overwhelmingly. Mitt Romney lost. What did he do? He did signature harvesting, got on the ballot, threw a bunch of ads on there. No, I moved to Hawaii at that point, so I wasn't able to vote. Yeah. I was actually a Republican still at that point. I didn't switch to Libertarian. Actually, my first political registration was to unaffiliated when I was living in Hawaii. But that's what happened. And so dark money comes in and blasts all those ads and drowns everyone else out. And he lost because he could say, well, he stole his talking points. So I'm gonna work on the budget. We're gonna cut the spending and all these things. And of course, has he done that?
Dirty politics.
Not really. Right. And so fast forward, here we go. Mike Kennedy's won overwhelmingly again, but for the House, and Stuart PA is backed by Romney. So, however, it's not Romney. So Mike has a chance of winning. I'm not picking a winner or loser in that race. I know Mike Kennedy. When I say I know him, we know each other on a first-name basis. I see him often in church hall.
Yeah.
He's Dr. Mike. I call him Brother Mike since we're at church.
Yeah.
Again, there's a backstory on that later for a different time. But I respect him. I know he's not as passionate I am as getting rid of the income tax. He's more livid about paying his property taxes to the monopoly school district that he doesn't send his kids to. He homeschools all of his kids. And he's upset with the property tax and with the values going up and paying more. So we can agree on that. He wants to lower those ones, but frankly, the income tax is an easy one because that's just theft of labor.
Yeah.
So there we go. We got a Mitt Romney backed endorsed candidate in the Republican primary. And if you and I wanted to even just entertain that idea, the legislature, this is where the crumminess comes in, back in January, passed a legislation that prevented anyone from switching their registration to vote in the primary and had to change it back in January. They moved, of course, the deadline to the first week or second week of January instead of the first week of March. So there's a lot of shenanigans happening in Utah to not penalize people who are passing legislation. They have to wait another couple years and remember, did my legislator pass something abhorrent? Now I'm going to go register and go run against them. Well, now they have another two. They've delayed that by a couple years. That's Utah for you. There is good old boy politics in Utah, alive and well.
So one thing I wanted to bring up, because I thought this was kind of relevant, especially why we were talking about the state of Utah, but it was something that Connor Boyack had said. And so let me bring that up.
For those that remember, Connor Boyack is the head of the Libertas Institute.
Yeah, the Libertas Institute, and does the Tuttle twins and everything. But what he says here is that if Libertarian Party members capture just 10% of the energy spent on their internal drama and applied it to actually advancing libertarian ideas, it would be a game changer. Instead, they're content with playing games and going in circles, hence why I stay away. So what's your first thought hearing something like that?
Well, so this is obviously a condemnation of the party from national and probably unfairly onto the state party. Now, prior to me joining the state party, when I moved back from Hawaii in 2019, there was some bad blood. There was some disagreement and argument. I don't know the details of that, and Connor does not go into that. And I don't know Connor personally, although I've worked with some of his people, and they're good people. And it's a good organization, in my opinion.
Agreed.
There were some bad things that happened, and, it's unfortunate. And so he's pretty much given up on spreading libertarian ideas through political means. So he's not focused on that whatsoever. So he's doing it through the Institute, which of course he has the Tuttle Twin books, and then he has these other movements, whether it be sponsoring the entrepreneur fair for the kids, or whether it be having legislative policy analysis or analyst up on the Hill, giving advice. Those are practical ways to influence up on the Hill. And if it wasn't for the Libertas Institute on the Hill, I'll be honest with you, we would probably have less progress on some of these issues. Not to discount the work of the 10th Amendment Center or the Defend the Guard guys who are out there diligently trying to move the needle on the separate issues. But I have nothing but respect for Connor, and he had a poor experience, and why get involved in that when he is doing work now that he's seen be much effective? So I applaud him. Oh, and by the way, he's for those that don't know, he is a supporter of the Mises Institute, and so he goes to the supporters convention. I think it's every October or so, or was it September, October? He goes. My understanding. So he's a supporter of in the private world of spreading the ideas, and so he's doing it through his books and other media, and I applaud him.
So the one criticism I had about this was that, for one, not everyone within the party is okay with the drama. In fact, most everyone is not. And I would
especially
argue
in Utah, right? I mean,
it's
if you knew
especially
in the
Utah.
Utah Libertarian Party, we're not about the drama.
Yeah, we work very hard to avoid all of it, and it has nothing to do with us. But outside of that, it was more of a, in my opinion, that outside of us not being involved in the drama, there is also some things going on internally in the party. I mean, there are very two divided factions. This isn't just high school drama. And that, I think that was ultimately, I mean, it didn't bend me out of shape hearing this, because I agree with the sentiment. Like, the party should definitely be way more unified and working towards a lot more things like what the Libertas Institute is doing, because they are making great strides in this. And I highly respect Connor in what he has been able to build. It's just incredible. And I applaud him for doing that, especially in this state. So I'm very happy with that.
There are so many issues they're tackling. One of them, and I got involved with this last year until there were some things that happened with housing and being pro building, right? Pro housing building. And, it's now become a talking point for Spencer Cox. I don't know what he's really thinking about housing, but, Utah is no longer the cheap place that, it used to be. And you could argue that land has always been more expensive, because here the federal government controls so much land and has not given land to the state like it promised decades ago.
Also, it might have something to do with the fact that, like 3/5 of our entire government are real estate agents and realty lawyers, and there's so many people that work in the real estate industry that are also in government that well, that's actually one of the reasons I started running in the race that I'm running in, is because I've noticed a pattern with a lot of the people that work within the real estate industry that are also in government, which is a huge portion of our government here in the state. They've definitely padded things for their industry.
Well, would you say that conflicts with those who are also in the government who are into construction? I mean,
yes.
Brad Wilson, for example, I believe is on the construction side.
Yes.
And so they're incentivized to have more construction built.
Yes.
And so that's kind of competing, right? I mean, those that want higher prices to sell. But really, if you think about it, if the volume is down, then sales are down. And so anything to keep the sales up. I found it interesting that when I think it was last year, they had the pre-manufacturing or the manufacturing homes lobbyist who went to Washington, D.C. and said, we need houses and we want to build prefab made homes. There are several examples. Las Vegas has got some. Europe has tiny homes or prefab manufacturing houses that are built up. I don't know, the standards that are blow your mind, right? They're hurricane resistant, they're fire resistant, they're flood resistant. All the wiring's in it. I'm a Boxable, of course, is one of them. There are several other names, but that's the issue here. In my opinion, I mean, Utah is no longer an affordable place. I'm telling my kids, says, look, unless something dramatically happens and you strike it rich or I get hit by a car and there's a big old payout from my insurance policies, because I do have them. My wife does not like it when I talk about that because she does not want me to die. But if they strike it rich and it doesn't become a problem, then sure. But the problem is the housing is so expensive. Land is so expensive. And so that affects where we are today. And I told my kids, look, you may want to look somewhere else. I mean, I'm pretty determined probably not to retire in Utah because number one, I speak more than just English. And I love to travel. So I will likely be retiring, not in Utah and perhaps not in the country. And that's not a unique perspective. There's so many people doing that now.
Hey, there's a Monero city down in Argentina.
Which one is it? Is it called Monero?
No, but the entire city, I'll have to send it to you after we're done here.
It's very secret, right? Because you can't talk much about it because the transactions are secret.
It's totally open.
Okay.
Their soccer team uses the Monero logo and everything. And our friends over at Monero Talk actually went down there on their last trip down there. So I'll send you the video. It was pretty cool to see.
Maybe do a plugin for Monero. So if you really care about privacy and you really want just the peace of mind of not being intruded upon by anyone, then Monero is the way to go. And people will say, yeah, but it could be used for bad things. Well, have you ever seen a drug bust?
Cash.
And cash, right? I mean, cash is probably the most used medium of currency, if not exchange for illicit activities. And so, those that want to squash digital privacy or sovereign custody will cast aspersions and say, look, it's all a bunch of scammers and people who want to defraud other people. And there are people who do defrauding, but you can't defraud Monero. I mean, if you got a private wallet and you're transacting between each other, it's anonymous. I mean, you may know each other, but that transaction is going to be hidden.
Well, it's literally just peer to peer.
It's
the most pure peer to peer possible. And I actually saw somebody not too long ago. It was an experiment of them mining Monero through a radio, through like an FM AM radio. Wow. And just the capabilities of something like this, they were basically trying to demonstrate the fact that no matter what, if there's people out there willing to use this and willing to fight for it, there's no way to get rid of the peer-to-peer digital private cash. So, and I think it's a wonderful tool. I always talk about a toolbox, and we have many different tools, and this is one of the tools that we need to be able to move forward in this world, along with gold backs and different, exactly right there. Yep.
I knew you're going to bring it up, so I have it.
Yep. Goldbacks. I absolutely love it. I interviewed Jeremy not that long ago, and another wonderful export out of Utah.
Yeah, I wonder when they're going to be ready for the big promotion, because as Jeremy would say openly, he says, look, unless we've got a process in place to handle the request, they don't have the ability to go live like big time, right? I mean, so they're there, but they need more gold backs for exchange. I mean, and to be honest, the premium is high
Yeah.
for a gold back. But if you're willing to buy at a wholesale rate and then use it on the retail rate, you'll get a little bit of a discount. I mean, but the point is, it's fungible, and I think it's fun just having them. I mean, I've got them here in my wallet. I mean, if you think about it, they're especially with the price of gold going up right now. I mean, I remember buying something like a 3 something. Now it's like getting close to 5. I'm like, okay, maybe I should, if I really want to have gold, maybe I should look into bullion, right? Because if you put your money or your dollars into your savings account, I mean, unless you've got a really high interest rate or you got one in Mexico right in the wave of their appreciation of the peso, you're just gonna be eaten alive. But yeah, it's an alternative money, right? That's the point. And I like what RFK says is getting rid of any capital gains on using alternative currencies, because the point is it's not used for speculation. I mean, you can speculate anything. You can speculate on whether Donald Trump, how many days will spend in jail, and whether that will raise his chances of getting elected. And I haven't seen the spread lately, but they said Trump was winning lately in that head-to-head in Vegas.
So this is actually the average exchange rate all time ever since they launched. And I mean, that's a pretty good chart in my opinion. So from, let's see, July 17th of 2019 until now, I mean, it's going on up pretty solid. So
and it is based off the price of gold. So for those who are thinking, well, it's just so expensive, they go, well, hold on here. The price of gold has gone up, and so the premium with it. Although I know Jeremy will talk about this, and of course I'm not the most knowledgeable, but he did mention that as the price of gold goes up, the premium goes down. Now, I don't know if I've seen any evidence of that happening, but he says that as the price of gold goes up, then that becomes less of an issue. I don't know what point you would have that be reducted because it isn't 80-something%. It'd be nice to have a 50% premium versus that. But if you're looking to store your wealth, I mean, really you want to use bullion. But if you're looking to transact, I mean, where I live, and I think where you live too, there's a growing list of vendors who will take gold backs. I go to Ace Hardware.
Massive.
I go to Ace Hardware, and they'll take gold. There's a new Indian restaurant that just opened up, and I need to walk in and say, look, I'm not going to play a game with your race or your nationality, but I know Indian people love gold. Because they will store up gold and transfer from one kid to another from generation to generation. Do you want to take gold? Because if you just go down the street right here in Alpine, you can change it for currency if you want. So there's no reason not to say yes to gold, because you're not going to lose.
Well, and that's
food, by the way, Little India.
That's what I always do is I offer gold backs. I'll offer Monero, and if they don't accept it, I always act like it's just the biggest bummer. Like, man, I wish I could do this, and fine, I guess I'll pay you in cash. I mean, this is just really stupid.
You're it's about the textiles, but this 10 gold back. Times 4 something right now, right? That's 40 something. If you put in dollar terms, that's 40 something dollars, but they're gold dollars, right? I mean, that's the thing is this is gold. There's gold in here. This is the real deal. This is the real commodity, a real money versus a piece of paper that inflates over time. I mean, I'm just glad that we don't have $20 Big Macs if you go to McDonald's, because I heard that was it $18 in New York or something, or in Manhattan. And they have it'd be an interesting discussion to look at the price of Big Macs across the country, and I think Utah had some of the lowest prices.
Yeah, the price of Big Macs plus the size have shrunk and the prices have risen. So
of course, the quarter pounder is a quarter pound still. I mean, so if you're going for the quarter pounder, keep on it.
Cheaper quality meat.
Although someone that was saying that they had were on a carnivore diet, and maybe not anymore, but they said, look, the quarter pounder is not frozen meat; it's fresh meat, and even though it may not be like the best Angus grass-fed beef out there, the truth is it's fresh. It's going to have all the proteins you need. And so, I mean, give the Quarter Pounder a shout out. I mean, it's not the highest quality meat, but it's going to have proteins. Probably the best thing they've got at McDonald's, unless you're into the French fries. But the French fries aren't as good as they used to. I mean,
well, I'm pretty sure the French fries have like 9 ingredients.
You know? It's not just potatoes and salt like they do in peanut oil like they do in In-N-Out Burger.
no, surprisingly.
I know I've seen them. You see the machines.
Yeah. But hey, I think we're going to wrap up here. I think this was great. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on, though, before we wrap?
Yeah. So for those that are in the liberty movement and maybe those that are just casually listening, I would say this: don't give up. Don't give up hope. There's challenges out there. There's the national stuff going on. I mean, I wish that those here would listen that, we live in a republic, a society of republics. Utah is a republic. The United States itself is a combination of republics. So should anything happen to the federal government, I'm not saying anything is going to happen to it, but the point is we all live in different republics, and you can vote with your feet. You can love one state or not stay in a state. Go live where you want to. I think Harry Brown said it best, where you could find freedom in an unfree world, and so I would say hang your hopes high. Have a cheery attitude, move forward. If you want to get involved politically, there's some great candidates running in the Utah Libertarian Party. Live a free life, whether it's living a life free of addictions or free of turmoil, anger. I mean, there's so many things you can think of. If you have a debt issue, pay off your debts. Just focus on you. Focus on being healthy as you can. Because that's what I'm going to do. And we haven't talked about my music stuff at all. I have my tagline musician and Liberty
Activist. It's a perfect excuse to have you back.
Very well. Yes. I would look forward to that, Jacob. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. And we didn't really touch on it too much, but anyone who didn't see Angela McArdle's video that she put out today, I think she made a really good point. This is something that the libertarians specifically are not paying attention to, and that's we still do have the political sway. However, now she has pointed it out to bring the political sway in a different direction, because at first it might have been Trump will win by, he gave us 3%. I thought that was pretty generous, and his 3% comment was hilarious.
I think it was like 6.5% in Utah County.
Was it?
When Joe Jorgensen ran. So we were like the 9th highest county in the entire country.
Wow.
They voted for the Libertarian candidate. So where I live,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I don't know that's going to be the case now because of the things we talked about. Hey, one thing before we hang up.
Yeah.
One thing, Spike had a Spaces on X event. Did you catch that?
I popped in for a minute. Didn't stay around for too long. I had other stuff going on in the background.
One thing I want to mention from that is that he talked about the perspective of you've got those who are the I would say pragmatists, but the moderates. You got the moderates, and you got those who are of the radicals. And even though there's a radical caucus, and there's not really a moderate caucus. Yeah. The point, as he's saying, is we can't be at each other's throats. And so, I have my personal beliefs, and you do, and we're going to have our own strategies for promoting liberty. I like Spike's focus on just getting out there and go and live in a life of liberty. And I look up to someone like Spike, who was in town. I wasn't able to spend much time when he was in town because of my music stuff going on. We could talk about later. But I'm so thankful for him. And so I would say, thank you for having me on. Let's move forward with liberty and the things that we can do, live a free life.
Yeah.
Whether it be in our privacy, whether with our money, our work. I'm in an industry that's inherently less regulated, somewhat software development. Yeah. It's such a wonderful industry to be in because the only regulations we have to worry about is handling people's data and making sure that we're protecting ourselves from those who are malicious. Yeah. So go live a free life, and let's enjoy this summer. I'm so glad it's not winter anymore.
Yeah. I would have to agree. You know, it's interesting because I think this is an important time to focus on something that Jordan Peterson always said, and that's to clean up your own room. And maybe we should be looking at ourselves a little bit more versus telling other people how the country should run, how they should live their lives. Maybe we should work on what we can do in our own lives to be able to live a little bit better, a little bit freer of a life. One thing I will say about that is that the powers that be, the elite, the New World Order, whatever you want to call this entity of power that's coming down on all of us in a tyrannical manner, they are bringing the fight to us in our houses. We've got all the chemicals, we've got poisoned water, we've got poisoned food, we've got just chemicals being pumped into our houses in so many different ways. The battlefield is in our home. And if you can beat that battlefield, you're already leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else. And so, like Jordan Peterson says, is clean up your own room. And I think that's a perfect time for us to be able to focus on things like that, is right now, when whatever happens politically is going to happen, whatever. You know, Trump's going to win or he's going to lose, but whatever's going to happen on that front is going to happen. However, you can affect what's going on in your own personal life. You can grow the friendships that you have. You can grow relationships with your family, or you can build a new family if that's your prerogative. But either way, it's a perfect time to focus on ourselves a little bit more and really start at the bottom, because this really is going to be a system that's going to be fixed from the ground up, and there's nothing closer to the ground than your home. So that's my parting words on that. So, hey, Phil, thank you so much for joining. I definitely want to get you back on again. I thought this was a lot of fun, and I can only imagine there are going to be a lot crazier things coming. I mean, we still have the October surprise to look forward to, plus everything in between. It's going to be an absolutely crazy election season. So yeah, let's definitely get you back. I definitely want to talk about your music stuff next time. And for everyone else, keep an eye out. I am currently working with Jose of No Way Jose. I have started a Twitter thread, or an X thread, all about the False Memory Syndrome Foundation and their ties to the CIA. It's all started with my fascination with SRA, or satanic ritual abuse, and False Memory Syndrome Foundation has been used to discredit people who have experienced any sort of ritual abuse, and I believe it's been used to discredit these people and to sweep under the rug a lot of abuse that's been suffered in this country. And so I'm tackling this foundation to expose them for the spooks that they are, because they are tied to the CIA and it was meant on purpose. So make sure and keep an eye out on that. We dropped episode 1 on his channel over on No Way Jose. So go check that out. And otherwise, go to risetoliberty.com/links. And other than that, we've got some more episodes coming up. So hang out for a sec, Phil, and we'll close up on the back end. Otherwise, everyone else, until next time, stay free, my friends.